Hey guys, it's Joseph. I don't really do this often, but I've been meaning to do it for quite a while now, and I haven't really gotten around doing it, but here I am now. I'm 29. I'll be turning 30 this year, the big 3-0. I'll be out of my 20s before I know it, and I'll still feel like a kid one way or another. The only difference is in the number of years in my age. Currently working, and I'm also in school. I've always wanted to finish college, but after so many times trying and failing during my early 20s, I eventually gave up for a good 4 years before I decided to come back, this time with proper medication. And surprise, surprise, it works like a charm. I'm now getting straight A's with the exception of 2 French classes, and my GPA has skyrocketed, and now I'm set to transfer to a larger college, hopefully in the spring. Despite all that, there are some downsides to everything that's been happening to me lately. For starters, I've become overweight. More specifically, I've gained about 60 pounds in the past couple of years. I don't know why, but if I were to guess, it'd have to do with the fact that I've been eating a lot more heavily today than I have in the past. I think my metabolism has slowed down significantly over the years. Maybe it's a product of me getting older. I don't know. But it's not like I'm not doing anything about it. For a while now, I felt bloated and fat and uncomfortable in my own skin. But I've eventually worked up the courage to actually start doing something about it. I hate going to the gym because I always get bored going there. So I decided to get a stationary bike and sort of pedal to the rhythm of my daily activities. And what that essentially means is that since I spend a good amount of time sitting around or playing video games, I feel like I should at least do it actively by adding biking to the mix. I call it the lazy man's exercise. There's really nothing to it. While I bike, I'll have a controller in my hands to play games, so I don't get bored. And I've really committed to it too. I've been doing it 5 days a week for 2 hours at a time for just about 2 months now, but I don't think it's actually helping. I don't know if it's too soon to expect results, but I feel like the intensity just isn't high enough to truly make that much of a difference. But the idea is to at least be somewhat active, doing what I usually do on a daily basis. And it's not like I'm biking with the least amount of resistance either, because I end up sweating profusely sometimes too. The problem is I get really hungry after exercising, so I overcompensate by eating back all the calories that I burned and then some. I don't want to change my diet because I enjoy eating way too much. And for the longest time, I've struggled to come to terms with the fact that that's probably what's causing my weight to gain. In fact, I've recently found out that I've gained 10 pounds in the past month or two despite all of the exercise that I've been doing. And I don't know if it's because I've gained muscle mass in my legs or not, but I think I'm going to take this as a wake-up call and try to limit my food intake. I'd say a lot has changed throughout the years I was away from school. I had moved to California out of an optimistic coming-of-age means to find some sort of purpose, but I never actually found anything worthwhile. The 4-day trip driving across the country was very memorable, to say the least, but my experience in California was a bit lackluster. It didn't really live up to the dream. I was broke most of the time and I was working. Then I had to depend on my roommate for a while to cover my rent so I could live to see another day. And one thing led to another, and I decided to move back to North Carolina. Bills began piling up before I could pay for them all. Add to that all the parking tickets I've accrued. It didn't take long before I decided to move back to North Carolina and start fresh. I was in California for 4 years at that point, but it wasn't really a choice per se. The standard of living in North Carolina is inherently cheaper than it is in California. But when I got back, I felt like I lost all of my sense of purpose. I was questioning my direction in life through this existential dread that really only got worse. But there was somewhat of a silver lining in my coming back. My therapist supplied me with a new set of medications that did absolute wonders for me and gave me the motivation to try college out again. And needless to say, my existentialism went away and I began making consistent A's. It was a miracle in disguise. It was truly amazing. A lot of my childhood was spent in depression, alone, playing video games all the time. I wanted to be a writer and played really any game with a good story. I remember fantasizing about the wonders of storytelling, but I was too depressed to really try to write. In fact, I'd always be scared that anything I wrote wouldn't be good anyways. And this was a common recurrence. I never had the motivation or capacity to do anything productive, and I never really cared about my grades. They say you should endlessly pursue whatever personal projects you can when you're young to flourish. But the only thing I ever committed to was expanding my imagination through art. And by art, I mean video games. I was obsessed with storytelling through this medium. I didn't have the attention span to read books until I became obsessed with sort of the self-help world. And even then, whenever I read, I'd lose track of where I was because I would stop paying attention, so then I'd have to reread the selections all the time. And with audiobooks, it's even worse. I can't tell you how often I have to rewind because I just stop paying attention. My mind goes on autopilot and I just lose track of where I was. ADHD is a real thing. It's even worse when you're depressed and anxious on top of it because your mind gets preoccupied by all these unsolicited thoughts that carry weight and thoughts that negatively affect your well-being. There's really no point in thinking about how things could have been, though. Life could have been a lot worse. And it wasn't that I didn't have anything to commit to, career-wise or life purpose. It was the fact that I was too depressed to pursue any type of milestone, let alone getting out of a rut. It's really a miracle that I graduated from high school without medications altogether. But maybe it isn't, considering how easy high school is. But you do have a lot of cases where people do drop out, and there's usually extenuating circumstances involved in these situations. I remember as a teenager when I was severely depressed, I found this tiny glimmer of hope watching an anime that had been the gateway to turning me into a weeb. If you don't know what a weeb is, it's a person obsessed with anime. Another word for it is otaku. At the time, I had no friends, I had no family members to talk to, and no therapist to shoulder off any baggage. I never really got along with anybody in school, and my grades were dropping pretty heavily. It got so bad for me that I'd skip school often by camping in my closet in my room for days on end. I'd essentially go to the front door, open it, pretend like I leave, then close it, and then sneak up to my room and hide in my closet and hope nobody notices me for the rest of the day until I do the exact same thing coming back. I was really depressed. It was very debilitating. I did not want to go to school, and I felt like if I did, I would shoot myself or something like that. Although I probably wouldn't. Maybe. Who knows? My mom is super Asian and doesn't have the cultural capacity to understand any of my American problems. And at the time, my dad's mental health was slowly deteriorating over time until he eventually succumbed to Alzheimer's. Yeah, adolescence was an uphill battle. Was I lonely? At the time, yes. And for a long time, really. I always knew that whatever I felt wasn't normal and that my mental health needed to be addressed. So I did end up getting help. But it wasn't until college, though, that I sought help because I couldn't understand for the life of me why I struggled so badly with my grades. I kept showing up late to my classes and dropping out of them. I would retake classes over and over, hoping things would be different this time. but it never was. And even with some of the medications I was prescribed, I still struggled and never really knew why. It was benign. Eventually, I had this mentality that if I wasn't going to do well institutionally, then I ought to find a way to strive for success individually, free from any systemic measures of success. I didn't want to rely on any institutional methods to move up in life. I wanted to build myself up as an individual and do things differently from the norm. Everyone was so obsessed with doing things by the book or the rules. I wanted to tear myself away from it. It seemed to me that most people couldn't tell the difference between what was actually okay and what they were conditioned to believe was right and wrong. And this is usually through their upbringing or feelings or experiences. There was a massive difference. And at the time, I didn't have the capacity to articulate or describe the issues at play. All I knew at the time was that I just didn't feel comfortable in the world that I was living in. And so I became obsessed with reading self-improvement and financial independence books. And the stuff you learn from them is very invaluable too. Again, I just wanted to tear myself apart from the group thinking the world I lived in had, because I hated the way people judged others for doing things differently that I thought were normal. These people were living their lives normally in their own way, and they were being judged and punished for apparently being ignorant of whatever unwritten social rules were in place. It wasn't an issue stemming from a lack of exposure to different cultures, although it could be. It was more about a violation of social rules and expectations that really made no sense or inhibited the freedom and capabilities of a person more than anything else. I think this probably has a lot to do with the fact that I've always felt like an outcast. But if I was going to succeed by doing things differently, I needed a way to study up on how exactly I was going to navigate the gray area of social constructs. And so I did. Growing up, I've always prioritized my character above everything else because I felt like nothing mattered more in life than a person's character. I mean, after all, it's how we remember others by. Needless to say, however, I've been sorely disappointed over and over that hard work and politeness are, apparently, more important. It's one of those things where if character gets in the way of your work ethic or your ability to be polite to others, then it's a hard no. And in my experiences, I've encountered a lot of hard no's. I was always bad at everything I did too, and would try to chalk things up to clumsiness and humor, but really to no avail. Now that I'm on antipsychotics, I've gotten exponentially better at everything I do, but it's still hard getting along with others when they're seemingly unwilling to compromise a part of themselves to be more flexible. I would like them to be more understanding, but it feels impossible to be on the same wavelength with folks unless I fully adopt their standards, which they're always inclined to have you do. And it's not really something I want to do. It's one of those things where you could say this is an opportunity to learn from other folks, and this is true, but there's sort of a fine line between learning how to be efficient and effective at what you do and having them assume your dedication to their cause. I will learn the essentials and get the job done, but it doesn't change the fact that you and I are different people on equal standing with different views. And it doesn't mean that we can't get along, because we can. I was a heavy romantic as well. I found beauty in just about everything, and I romanticized every concept, thought, or feeling I've ever had. And I was completely entranced by girls as well. The only difference was there was absolutely no girl in existence that felt the same way I did about them. I think I've creeped out just about every girl I've ever encountered. I was rejected all the time. It was so bad that I developed a strong love-hate relationship with them. I loved that I could fantasize about doing all these romantic things you'd see on TV or in the movies with them. But in my experience, none, And I and I mean absolutely none shared the same sentiment. I was rejected constantly and never really understood why until I realized girls really just wanted a strong masculine man. Someone who works and is paid well and shares the generic qualities that make up a man. It was something I never was and never cared about being. And going back to wanting to do everything differently from others, I never really liked this outlook. To me, it was superficial and embodied no ounce of anything romantic. It was your run-of-the-mill survival instincts at play. That said, 29 years into this day, I've been single pretty much most of my life. I don't think it should really come as a surprise. They just don't do things like they do in the movies. And that's what I wanted to do. Snarky comments and flipping around against the wall, undressing each other, it just doesn't happen in real life. At least in my experience, unfortunately. I wanted spontaneity, passion, and fun. They want a good boy, bad boy figure, one that behaves and, more importantly, works. I sought friction that only led to misunderstandings and misgivings, while politeness was the hallmark of a worthy provider. It was really the suburban mindset at play. Hated the suburbs. What a boring place to be in. Everybody is superficially polite to each other and nothing is walking distance. There's very little culture, unless you want to call suburban culture a thing, which I guess it is. Too many barbecues, and people take pleasure in very trivial things. I'm not going to go too into it. I think I'll just move to a city with a lot of action when I get the chance. If I'll ever get the chance. That being said, it's not really my place to decide what girls are supposed to be like. It just sucks that I haven't had any luck in finding one that I can truly connect with, because after all, that's really what it boils down to. I've approached so many girls in my lifetime and I've shared a strong connection with none of them. Again, it just sucks, and it's how reality is. When you're a romantic, you tend to have this longing to be with someone who shares their time with yours and lets you forget the rest of the world exists. You want someone who calms and heals your soul and whispers these memorable remarks for you to never forget. That's really the type of relationship I look for, at least. Not everybody is alike, and everybody has different motivators. I get that. It's just inherently infuriating that I have to deal with a dominating culture full of folks with shared qualities and norms that really take away more diversity than it adds. It doesn't exactly sweeten the pot with an element of surprise for me. I'm just stuck, trapped in this world that ensures your misery and that you may never meet your salvation. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I hope I've resonated with you today, one way or another, and I know this is cliche, but you're not alone, especially if you've gone through similar things. I know I've just started, but I'm going to try to make more videos in the future. I'll be making videos about really anything related to my thoughts about something, or current events, history, or politics, that sort of stuff. I'll definitely be doing more vlogs as well, so keep a lookout for those. I don't know if I want to turn them into artistic projects or not quite yet, but I may or may not do them that way. We'll see. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.